We're live on Facebook. Hi, guys. You caught us a little bit in the middle of our conversation prior to the interview. Thank you so much for joining us on Dialogues That Matter, an interview series where we speak to change makers. This is Shruti here from Dialogues, and we have with us today someone really special. This is a conversation we had planned in September around education. For some reasons, it couldn't happen, but we still persisted and we wanted this conversation to take place. It is about a conversation around education for kids with special needs. And we have with us Suchita Somshekaraya today. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am.
My pleasure, Shruti, my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this dialogue.
We are honored. We must say that we are stoked to have this conversation with you. Before getting into it, I think let me first introduce you and the work that you do to our audience so that we can then get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Suchita Somshekaraya is currently the secretary and also holds the position of managing director at Shrishti. Shrishti is Shrishti Special Academy, which is a non-profit that was founded in 1995 by three women special educators. It's primarily dedicated to enabling self-reliance and improving the quality of life of persons with intellectual disabilities, autism, cerebral palsy, and multiple disabilities, irrespective of their sex, religion, caste, age, severity, and empowering them to be contributory. About ma'am, she has a master's in sociology, a diploma in special education, with a specialization in mental retardation and autism. She's also a master trainer in behavior modification. She has a certificate in counseling skills and has undergone training in STAT, which is basically screening tool for autism in toddlers, and she is the co-founder of Shrishti, like I introduced prior to this. Her expertise is basically working with children with autism and other multiple disabilities. And of course, she's also contributed to human resource and management of Shrishti's work. Thank you so much, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you. And I think we can go on and on about you and the work that you do. But let's start with this conversation
Yeah,
where, for the lack of I mean, I'm going to right at the beginning talk about, let's assume, for our ignorance and things like that, not a lot of us have awareness about what is it that we call as special needs, or it might not be something that's very well understood by people. Could you talk to us a little about what would you call as special needs, and if I'm using the right term, if not, please do correct me.
when we say special needs, see, all of us grow up, all children grow up, and we all follow the different milestones and we achieve milestones. We go to school, we study, and things like that. Right?
Right.
Children with special needs, they are definitely our children who need extra care, extra
Right.
support to achieve even their own developmental milestones.
Right.
Be it crawling, walking, even from basic something like neck holding, and achieving their milestones to be able to walk, to run, to do their own things, to be able
Right.
to think appropriate to their age, which is the normal thing. Here you will see children are lacking behind, and the lack can be anything. It can be a mild lag, moderate lag, or a severe lag. So depending
Right.
on the support that they require, this additional support that they would require is what is called special needs. That is a child or a person with special needs. That is the normal, regular support, or the regular way of learning or the way of working is not conducive, and they would need additional help to achieve certain goals to their own potential.
Right.
So that would mean special needs.
Right, right. And if you could break it down to us, I know when we talk about special needs, there are different sects and there are different things that kind of come into special needs. Like I kind of mentioned in the introduction, which is, there's autism, there's intellectual disability, there's cerebral palsy, and there's just a bunch of them, right? Could you kind of break it down to us and help us understand what are the different, I mean, how do you kind of bifurcate and what are the distinctions?
When we say persons with intellectual disability, you will see that person would have had a global delay in all areas. Could
Right,
be delayed in the gross motor, in speech and language, in academics, in cognitive related activities, in self-care. So you will see from below the normal is where they're functioning. So again,
right,
as I said, it can be just below the normal, or moderate, or mild, severe, or even profound. So people who have a general intellectual ability which is below the normal, about 70 or 75 IQ maximum, and they have difficulty across all areas, that would be intellectual disability.
Right.
A person with autism is usually a person who need not have an intellectual disability, but they have their own peculiar way of behavior, which is very difficult. It is a severe neurological disorder, developmental disorder, which affects the social and communication part of it majorly. Like when you see a baby looks at you in about 4 weeks' time, the baby is looking, making eye contact with the mom or anybody who's talking to them and giving a smile. So there's something meaningful. And when we say, look at Amma, look at Appa, look at Ajji or something, like the child is connected. So there is something where this child definitely would not be able to do this kind of a social connect. Okay. And they also have stereotypical behaviors, which would be something like spinning things, doing things repeatedly. Many of them have echolalia, that is parroting. It's like if you ask, what is your name? They'll probably say, what is your name? Instead of giving you an answer, my name is so and so. Okay. So with severe social, economic, and communication difficulty, with repetitive behaviors, and they are people who prefer to be on their own. They perceive their sensory processing, their understanding is very unique, and they will process it in their own manner. Like just a small tap could feel for them very, very harsh. Okay, so they would have, so this would be repetitive behavior, inability to imitate somebody, could be this. Again, there also the range is from mild, moderate, severe, and profound, can have associated difficulties, and so on. So that would be autism.
Right.
People with cerebral palsy, you'll see that they are physically involved. So they can be wheelchair bound, they can have spasticity, they can have muscle tightness, and they can be very floppy children. So again, there are different levels of spasticity. And they can have normal intelligence, but there are many of them who do not have normal intelligence, who also have an additional intellectual disability also. So they would need a lot of aids and appliances and adaptations to be able to learn and to communicate and do things. And when you say multiple disabilities, as the word itself says, there are multiples. There are different, like a person could have intellectual disability, autism, and cerebral palsy. A person could have intellectual disability with a visual impairment or a hearing impairment, or they could have a physical disability. So those are multiple things. Like a person with autism could also probably have Down syndrome. So this is the kind of thing that you would call multiple.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for patiently kind of helping us understand those, different texts that are available. I think it is a little helpful for people to understand if they're not aware of these different things. Before we get into a little bit more into the conversation, I'd like to understand from you about Shrishti. How did you come across, or how did you actually think of forming Shrishti? And what do you do at Shrishti? What we were kind of talking about prior to this conversation began, basically.
Okay, Srishti was born of a passion of us as special educators, and the three of us who started Srishti were all who chose special education as a career. So we do not have anybody at our homes who have special needs or people on the spectrum of autism or any of those things. So it was a conscious career choice that I made following my graduation. So when I graduated, and when there was a choice of what do I do, so yes, I did want to do my sociology. Of course, I didn't do my MA in sociology at that point. But then I wanted to do something where I felt worthy of my life. So I still remember I said that when I'm 50 and I think back, what have I done in life? Have I done something which the society needed? I should feel happy. And today I think I can blissfully say bye-bye to the whole world and go away, because I'm very happy with what I've been able, little that I've been able to do. So Srishti, we started working. We worked with another organization, and then we took off for various reasons to be with the family. I had 2 children, so I wanted to spend more time with them. But we started because this whole thing is so passionate. We didn't give up, so we worked from home. And on my bike one day, I said, "Why don't we register our own organization?" So in May of 1995, we decided we'll start our organization. And what better name than say Srishti? So we wanted to call, we called it, we were very, very clear. We call it Srishti Special Academy because we are not a school.
Right.
We did not want to limit our work to just teaching the children what we know as special educators. We wanted to see the child and the family and the community at large. So that's the whole premise on which Srishti was started. And what started with three of us with three children today has grown to about 150 children with over 50 staff members. And over the years, I think we have reached out to more than 5 or 6,000 children over this thing, or more than that, we have reached out. So we've had almost 700 or 750 children who have gone through programs for various periods of time.
Right.
And we were very lucky that in 2000, we were gifted a 2-acre piece of land by one of our donors, and they put up our first building and gave it. So over this 2 acres of land, you will see we are spread across 2 acres. We have created the infrastructure where we have programs, facilities from early intervention, which has also got a very exclusive program. We run a preschool which is inclusive. So normal children and special children study together and they learn the same curriculum. So we follow a UNICEF approved curriculum called ARAMB for this preschool program. So we have children from the neighboring villages and our own staff children, including my own niece and nephews who have grown up with us from the age of about 1.5. They attend the preschool and the special children learn with them. So from early intervention onto the livelihood where we are able to give them a job in a sheltered employment opportunity, that is where the Srishti program is. So we have our programs are very, very graded, starting from early intervention. We go into the early childhood program. So early intervention runs from 0 to 6 years. 6 years to 16 years, they are in the childhood program. So there they go through primary 1 level, 2 level, a secondary level, and then we prepare them. And when they are ready at about 16, they move into our pre-vocational training.
Right.
Because our purpose is to make each one of them contributory and also economically independent and contributory members of the community. Right. So we start them on at 16 for pre-vocational. Then at about 18, they get into the vocational training. So they're exposed to various vocations which are available at Srishti. And we see the aptitude and the ability of the child, the family background, what kind of support that the person can get from the family, which will pave the way forward for their livelihood in future. So following 3 to 5 years of vocational training, then they have an opportunity to work as apprentice in our own sheltered workshop. And those of them who can go out into the community and work, they do go out into the community and they're working very successfully. So we have a few of them who are working out in the community, maybe at a Shell petrol bank, maybe at a factory, or maybe in a beauty parlor, or they're working in different in their own parents' or brothers' offices and doing well there. So those who can go there are there.
Right.
But, the rest of them continue with our.
Right. I think, yes, that definitely helps us understand what you do at Srishti and how it's really important to do what you're doing. So thank you, I guess, for what you're doing at Srishti.
Okay, let me just add one thing which I missed. Srishti is not just with special educators. We have an entire team of therapists, physiotherapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist. We have art therapist. We also have family counselors, and we have social workers on our team. And we network with all the major hospitals in Bangalore. And we have periodic medical camps, which will also ensure that the medical support is provided for the children on site, along with aids and appliances for them. So all these departments are full-fledged departments. And over the 2 acres, we have developed our own organic farming. We also have sensory path, a foot reflexology path, a beautiful sensory park area, different play equipments for different age groups of children so that they can go back to the community and use the facilities in the community. We have an amphitheater. We also have a walker's path. So at least a minimum of 500 steps, my steps, adult steps, 500 steps that I take for one round. So there is definitely this kind of work so this kind of a facility which is created. And Srishti also has its own kitchen and dining hall where we cook nutritious vegetarian food every morning for breakfast and for lunch. So that's something which we ensure that the nutrition of the children is are also taken care
Right, right. I think
of. Sorry,
suddenly,
am I too say?
no, no. Suddenly, I had this
Elaborate.
urge of going to this school and studying there when you explained the entire thing. Uh, which actually does bring me to the next question, which is something that you brought up as well. When we talk about special needs, the one of the major things that we do talk about is inclusivity, right? We talk about
Yeah.
how there shouldn't be a distinction in terms of education, job, whatever it is, right? um, it's nice that at the primary level itself you're kind of taking away that distinction. Could you talk to us a little about how that distinction kind of hampers and comes in the way of bridging this gap?
Um, when we say inclusion, so as I told you, our whole goal is for the child to be included within the family. It's already in the family, but we want the child to be involved, participatory. So that's the reason that when parents come seeking for information, they come and inquire with us what's happening and what kind of support that they want. Then from there on, we start gently talking to them and understanding how vital their whole participation is, their whole involvement needs to be for the
Right,
children to get included and not to get excluded. Okay,
right,
there are cases when children come in very young, and we
right,
have done a lot of intense early intervention with the child and with the family, and the family is also able to do a lot of work with the child. Children have got integrated into the regular school systems, and they've
right,
gone on to regular school. They've even passed their 10th standard. Some of them have done their 12th, and some of them have even tried NIOS. So it would probably be a few percentage of children, but then we do see that they will be included.
right,
And Srishti's programs, we ensure that we invite regular school students to be part of visiting the organization to understand the kind of work which is there, and also to get back to build the awareness for them. And also, when these students come and they go back as changed human beings. They go back being more um, serious about their studies. They have a goal and they want to go back and do things. So when they
right,
see kids with special needs achieving so much, doing so much, and being so happy doing things,
right,
working so hard, they go back and thank their own, count their own blessings, and they go back and do better things, better in their lives. And
right,
we have had kids coming back and supporting us. So that's
right.
something which is.
Right. I think it also comes back to the point where you spoke about how inclusion is not something that's just done, let's say, at the academy or things like that. It's also about how at the community level or at the family level, there's inclusion and acceptance of, the way one is and how we can, make sure that progress and growth happens for these kids, right? Which kind of brings me to the next question, which is that in today's day and age, it's easy for people to kind of shun away kids with special needs or even their parents for that matter of fact, right? It becomes a huge burden and sorry, I don't want to use the word burden. It becomes a huge challenge rather than
Yeah.
anything, because there is no support and it's almost like it's their own world and they need to shoulder their own challenges and get through it and things like that. Where do you think we're lacking? Where are we going wrong with such a mindset? What are your thoughts on this as someone who has been in this for over 25 years now?
See, what I would like to say here is yes, it is a big challenge
Right,
because whatever they're trying to do, parents are not able to achieve what they want to achieve, and maybe
right,
they're able to or unable to understand. It
right,
also comes to the point of parents being able to understand what's wrong with their child, to understand the how disability is impacting, what
right,
is happening, how are they learning, what
right,
helps them to learn. Because when they come to Shrishti, we do a detailed assessment of each child. Okay. So when
right,
we do a detailed assessment, we're able to then present a report to the parents to say, your child in this area of motor skills, this is what your child can do. In the area of cognition and intellect, this is what your child can do. In the area of self-care, in the area of language and communication, in the area of socialization. So there's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of interviews, we collect a lot of information, and no assessment is done over one session.
Right.
Minimum 3 to 5 sessions that we take. So it's
Right.
each one could be spread 45 minutes to an hour, and it's spread over 3 to 5 sessions, which goes across maybe about a week or 10 days by the time we complete the assessments.
Right.
So we see a child independently of the parent, with the parent. We see a child within the with a group of people. We ask a lot of questions. We elicit a lot of information about the background history. We also appreciate and acknowledge what the parents have been able to do with their children to whatever age that they are, and how critical and how important it is.
Right.
So there is that we have to support them, we have to guide them and show them the way, what to do, because they don't know what to do. Though it is simple, we might be teaching them how to eat, how to walk, how to do simple things, how to be communicative, how to behave in a socially appropriate manner. Some of the children have very intense behavior challenges. They would not even have a certain tolerance for a few seconds,
Right.
let alone a minute.
Right.
And the parents are like, it is driving them crazy because they just don't know what to do. Some parents tie up their children to the wall or to the chair, or they're
Right.
beating up these kids when they get frustrated. So it becomes our thing to responsibility to explain to the parents. Many times, most doctors, because of the pressure of the work, they are unable to spend that kind of time with the families to explain in detail all the things. Of course, there are, how the disability is and how it has impacted the child, how things will be in the future, And when they come to us, we spend a lot of time in making them understand and answering their questions, answering their concerns. When we do that, their awareness gets better. And we know there's a lot of challenges. It's not just they and their child. Of course, they go through a lot of, we can have a whole dialogue only on how parents go through, what kind of stress and trauma that they go through, the kind of guilt, the kind of helplessness that they go through. But then we are supporting them, we are there for them, we give them information, we empower them, we support them to come up with strategies of how to manage their time, manage their work, how will they train the children, what kind of goals that they can take. And we take on major of the goals of what we can teach them. And first and foremost, what we work on is behavior.
Right.
That is prerequisites to learning. If a child does not sit in a place for a few minutes and pay attention and focus to seeing what is to be done, to do what needs to be done, the way it is meant to do, to follow instructions and to complete a task, no learning will happen.
Right.
So when we get them, after our assessments are over, we offer them what is the best program that we can give. And invariably, we start with individual sessions. Okay, unless the children are mild, they've already gone to different programs, and they have certain levels of independence, they have certain levels of sitting tolerance, attention, compliance. Then they might come for a week. The parents brings the child, accompanies the child for a observation, and then we will take the child. But when they are young, when they're thing, they come on individual sessions, half an hour sessions, 45-minute sessions. Primary focus. If behavior is the thing, we target behavior. We're not here to teach anything else, but first of all, to prepare the child to accept learning, to understand how the child processes the information that it is getting, how the child processes visual information, that is what the child sees, what the child hears, what the child does when it is manipulating objects, what does the child do within the community, within the environment that he or she is. And then we adapt and come up with strategies on how to enhance that learning. And of course, if physically they are not sitting, walking, or any of those physical inability, problems are there and they need to work on that, that will be one of the focus that they will get their physiotherapy and occupational therapy to be able to become mobile, to be able to achieve those motor milestones which are critical for them to then become independent as they grow adults.
Right. 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 So, as you're speaking, I think definitely what comes through is that their life seems to be as challenging as it is, both for the kids as well as the parents. Could you talk to us a little about what these challenges could be for kids with special needs and the parents as well?
See, the most critical, the first one is social distancing. Okay, we are today talking social distancing of the distance we have to maintain because of the pandemic.
Right.
But the minute, well, in the neighborhood or within the family, they come to know that this child is slow, is somewhat different compared to other children of his or her age,
Right.
then the first thing is people don't want to have anything to do with that family.
Right.
Okay? People don't understand, so they're just sitting. And many times parents feel that they are failures, that they've not been able to bring a typical, normal, perfect child to this world. So they themselves might go back, withdraw themselves, not get into the community, not interact with people. So I think that's one of the most important difficulty of social acceptance. So because of social acceptance is one of the biggest challenges. The other
Right.
challenge is where to go, what to do. Okay, the only place that they think of is doctors. The doctors can do diagnosis, but they can't do the training. Okay, the awareness that there are programs which there will be training over the last 20, 30 years now, 20, 30 years, I would say. From the last 30, 35 years in Bangalore, things have taken on a lot of different things have moved a lot better. I think today we in our country we are in the mecca of work for disability. This is the place. The If Silicon Valley was to IT, then disability work, Bangalore is the place in the whole of the country. Here is the place where anybody with any type of a disability will be able to access quality, good quality support and training and therapies that they can get is Bangalore. Maybe because we have the NIMHANS here, we
Right.
have the KPAMRC here, which has all grown and really brought about a lot of work in the disability sector,
Right.
I would say.
Right. Definitely.
I can go on and on.
Right.
Let you tell
Perhaps
me what you want me to say.
Right. No, perhaps an insight into the smaller things that you and I take for granted, whether, like you said, it's walking down a flight of stairs, just something as small and simple that you and I take for granted can be challenging for some kids with special needs, right? So, what are the challenges that they faced prior to this? And from what you're saying, I think what they do need is that human connection and human interaction. So, I can't imagine the kind of challenges that these kids are facing in a situation like COVID, with perhaps parents who might not have been spending or might not have the facilities to take care of these kids. So, what are the challenges that you're kind of foreseeing in this pandemic, and how are you kind of combating that?
See, in this pandemic, this whole thing of hygiene, social distancing, um, washing hands frequently. Many of our children who are young, if they might not even have the thing of being able to wash hands consistently. Many times they need support. They need to be supported to do a clean job of it, to wear a mask, and that is something like closing up your nose and your mouth.
Right.
Hey, you can't just run and walk about wherever you want. You have to have that mask. Some of them with the cerebral palsy might even be drooling. So
Right.
that is another concern because they are drooling, then hygiene, the safety
Right.
is compromised, and we just can't imagine how things can be for them. So
Right.
this pandemic has brought in a lot of difficulty, I would say, in certain sense. In the major senses, one is they're indoors. They
Right.
can't go out of the house,
Right.
right? They can't understand why school is not happening. Why there's no school? Why can't I go? I want to go out. I want to go to the neighbor's house. I want to go to school. Or I was saying, and I want to touch things, then everything is being like, no, 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 that has to be washed. Then you have to wash your hands. We can't go to grandma's house. We can't go to the neighbor's house. So major challenges. And
Right.
children can throw a lot of tantrums, and parents have great difficulty convincing them, asking them, telling them, and things like that, and it's not help. So many times we have had to talk to them and give suggestions to the parents to say, see, nobody is going out, show the neighbors or the other rest of the family members that they are not going to school, they're not going to college. Some cousins are staying home, and everybody is this thing, watching the TV, showing them that people are sick and people are having great difficulty. So
Right.
those challenges have been plenty for parents to train them to understand these things. So that's one of the goals that we give our parents, to say, teach them to wash hands frequently, teach them to wear the mask for prolonged periods of time, because if they have to go out or whenever they have to get back to school, then they have to wear their masks for prolonged periods of time, and they
Right.
can't go run and play with all their friends like how they could do before.
Right.
So I think great many challenges that parents have had to face.
Right. Right. I
Period.
think I think we've spoken a lot about the challenges. Could you talk to us a little about the solutions? What are the kind of solutions that are being adapted by people around the world, perhaps in India, that have kind of helped, kind of accelerate this growth?
Yeah, what have we done during this pandemic? Because kids cannot come to school, all institutions, including Srishti, have all the people working in the disability sector are keeping in touch with the parents and with the children.
Right.
Okay, over phone and over if they have a laptop and accessibility of those, they are doing online classes and things like that. But
Right.
where Srishti works with children majorly from the lower economic strata, so we call parents, we talk to them, and we ask them what they are doing, what are the tasks that they can get them involved. So we are giving suggestions to the parents and giving them simple steps on what how they could involve the children in day-to-day activities, giving them responsibilities, whether it is cooking or cleaning or washing, to
Right.
develop their independence in their own self-care, to have a routine,
Right.
basically to have a routine that they
Right.
should get up at a particular time. Because I think first 2 months was vacations, close to summer vacation, so everything went for say everything was went for a whole say disrupted. Children got up at whatever time, they slept whatever time. So from June we have brought in that they should get up at a routine, they should have a systematic routine, do certain things, do their own things, train them totally into independent self-care,
Right.
take up small chores at home and do those chores, and also have leisure time activities that they can play certain games at home, or they can involve songs or in coloring or in
Right.
painting, or if they have a garden to do some gardening work, if they have
Right.
a pet to take care of their pet. Some of the kids have gone to their native places, and they're there in the village with their grandparents and uncles and aunts, and
Right.
they're doing fantastically. They're taking care of cattle, they are going to the farms, they are helping in whatever was the chores which are being done there. So they're part of the whole cattle rearing and everything, like taking care of sheep, filling the water, doing some de-weeding, cleaning, and taking food to their uncles to the farm and things like that. So I think
Right.
it's been a good thing of learning these kind of activities which can happen. So that uh, we will see that there's a lot of improvement, and they are able to follow this. There are behavior challenges also. So again, we connect them to the doctors, we ensure that they get their medications or follow-ups and treatments, and of course a lot of counseling to parents, guidance to parents happens, and that's the kind of support which we give. So
Right.
every week, twice or thrice, the teachers call, the therapists call, and if there is a facility of a video call, the child is made to do the therapy, the follow all the exercises and do those things, and that kind of help is being done. So we are ensuring that at the best that whatever can be done at home, which is life skill training, is what we are doing. So that is being continued so that their progress continues to be there, and they
Right.
might they will not really regress, and they're just not, they lose all their whole routine and whatever skills they've gained. So I think we see a lot of improvement in those areas.
Right. And when we talk about anything, of course, we cannot ignore the role of the media, whether it be print media, whether it be
Yeah.
advertisements, films, or anything like that. That kind of helps shape our mindsets, right? So, what are your observations as to how the media kind of portrays or either acts as a barrier in kind of our perspective of understanding whether it's kids or adults with special needs?
See, if I have to be very frank and talk about the media per se has come up with a few things about disability. But what is happening with people with disability? What is the kind of difficulty that they are having? What are the challenges that they are having? That is not being highlighted, at least in the print or the other media. So once in a while, you hear about what it is. And
Right.
there needs to be a lot more of awareness that the media should be able to challenge, especially the television media, as should be able to really give a lot more of tips and awareness about how things are with disability and what can be done, what needs to be done. It's only
Right.
focused on the general public, so you don't get to see any awareness kind of things coming up on print or on the TV channels to say what is happening. But however, technology has been of great help. Like today, we are having this on a Zoom and it's live, right?
Right.
So on those lines, I would say being on Zoom or being on Teams or any of these kind of basing, it has connected people from across the world to be able to to share information, to upgrade knowledge, uh, to understand, to get into dialogues, to discuss what's happening, to think of way forward. So that way, I would say technology has helped a lot.
Right.
Definitely. On the social media, people in the disability sector have done a lot of work for
Right.
the COVID, for the pandemic, for people with disabilities. There's been innumerable amount of work that the people, organizations working with disability has have done. But
Right.
that is nowhere highlighted in the print or in the visual media. But it comes up only in the social media, on WhatsApp, on channels like this, that you come on Facebook and you portray and you say this is what you have done for disability. So
Right.
I would say that that kind of an awareness and the participation of the media needs to be definitely enhanced a lot more, whether it is pandemic or no pandemic. Even before the pandemic it was like this. So I think disability is the subject of disability and what needs to be done, the impact that it is, that awareness, I think it needs to be there. Today, across the country, we have 21 disabilities which have been recognized. 21 disability means, so, the kind of population that it would impact, we don't even have that census figures. We
Right.
only have for 7 disabilities which were there. And that itself was about 2 or 3 or 4% of the population. If you take in all the 21 disabilities, the census figure for people with disabilities will definitely pass 10% or more. And the
Right.
families who are affected is affecting more than 20 or 25% of the country's population are affected because of this. And there is hardly any work. The kind of, if you compare the kind of impact that this disability has impacted the number of people and the kind of awareness that's being created or the priority which is being given to disability, I think we have a long way to go in our country
Right.
to reach
Right.
that kind of a level.
Right.
But definitely technology with all these like Zoom and for WhatsApp and Facebook and all the other meetings which can happen on the virtual ways, things have done a lot. We have done a lot of work in the disability sector using this technology. Across the
Right.
world, we have connected with the people and we are discussing and taking things forward. We have been able to do certain studies and share information, but I think long way to go.
Right. I think to that effect, what is one piece of advice that you would like to give everybody, so that they can, have a more open and inclusive mindset with respect to people with special needs or disabilities? What is your one piece of advice?
See, it is nobody's fault that people are born the way they are. Each one of us are a part of nature. Okay, we are nothing but saplings of nature. If you plant a handful of seeds, all seeds will not sprout. All those will sprout will also not grow at the same thing, nor will they yield the same fruit. That is exactly how human beings are also. We are
Right.
also one of the species of nature. So I
Right.
would say be an open mind. It's nobody's fault, not the kid's fault, not the family's fault. It is definitely not bad parenting that children are born with disabilities. So please have an open mind, be compassionate, be open, be accepting. You don't know what to do, you can definitely ask them if they need help, and parents will be able to tell you what kind of help they need. A more accepting, a more inclusive. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody at any stage of mind, at any stage of life. There is known, there need not be any known genetic cause for you to have a person with disability can be born. So I would say, let everybody be open, accepting. Everyone can do things. If you see people at adults at this with the disability at Srishti today, they are part of making fantastic bags. They make fantastic. They are very good at horticulture. They are good at music. They are good at dance. They are good at work. If you want to work, like we teach them different domains. They are good at computer data entry operations. You would see them doing digitization. You have seen people with hearing impairment and visual impairment achieve pinnacles. They are doing anything which any other person, except that they don't have vision, but then they have all. They use all the other aids and appliances, the softwares which are there, and they are able to do and contribute like anybody. So even a person with multiple disability, with severe intellectual disability, can be contributory. They can do their work. They can be part of the whole chain of system of work, and they can be contributory. I think be accepting, accept them. It's not their fault, and everybody can progress.
Right.
I would really like to end my talk to say that anybody, no matter the age or the severity of their disability, each and every person can progress and become contributory. And if they can be contributory even towards their own self-care, even a severe multiply disabled child in our academy who has been with us for 10, 15 years and then is home only in bed or in a wheelchair, they are still contributory because they are cooperative. They make choices. They're cooperative to be taken care of. They make choices what they want to do. They show their love to their family members. They're able to communicate what they want, what they don't want. And I think that is what we are. Nobody can be written off. Everybody can contribute. Everybody can do things. And I think just we have to just we have an open mind and be accepting. And I think just be supportive. And reach out to them. I think that's something which give back to society. I think choose to give back to people with disability and organizations which work with disability. I think there's a lot of need.
Right. I can't end with any more better words. So thank you so much. I think on that note, we can end this conversation. Let me just check if we have any questions. If not, then I will just wind up with our routine. I don't think there are any questions. Just a second. I think while I'm checking if there are any questions, last but definitely not the least is how are you managing to stay positive in these trying and testing times? What have you been doing to keep yourself optimistic and, be a little more, just get out of the bed every day?
Everything is a passing phase. So it is challenging. It is stressful. It has given a lot of sleepless nights to us. But the more we understand, we get scared, and we also improve our knowledge. But we also know that it is a passing phase. We will be over this. And I'm sure all of us are working towards that whole thing. But to stay positive is, in spite of this, life has to go on. Life cannot stand still. And we need to make the best of the choice that we can. And whatever we have at the moment, let's make the best of it and what can be done. Take care of our health, take care of our family's health, and improve our knowledge and enhance our own learnings. And I think from all these things, we are doing a lot of learning. So there's a lot of new learnings that we are bringing in and getting more into deeper work that we have, deeper thinking of how things can be better, what else can be done. I think that's the thing, to stay positive. So life could be worse off than what it is. So I know that it's been trying, stressful times. We are seeing lots of people losing their family members, and that's really very, very stressful.
Right.
I think it's a passing phase. We will
Right.
get out of this. We got out of it last century, so we should get out of it now.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us your time, and for letting us, talk to you about this, what you do at Shrishti, how we can be contributory to this cause. And, thank you so much for having this conversation with us. I definitely learned a lot. I hope the people who joined in today also had something to take away. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. This is Dialogues That Matter, an interview series where we talk to people who are bringing about a change by doing what they do. And Mrs. Suchita was an example of that. Once again, thank you so much, ma'am. Hope to see you guys in our next
Thank you
interview.
so much, Shruti, for
Thank you.
inviting me.
Thank you. It's been an
Thank you
honor.
so much for inviting me. I've enjoyed this the whole dialogues, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you
luck.
so much. Till bye. Take care and stay safe. Yeah. Bye.